Good Erev Shabbos. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be learning with you on a Friday, Yom Shishi. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house on a Friday? Renee, Bella in Florida, Bill in Missouri, Gordo, not in Scotland, but in Malta. Welcome from Malta. Gordo, Joe in the Inland Empire, Paul in the Great Northwest, Guy in Ohio, Sharon in New Jersey, Ella in Southern California, Lanit in Silver Spring, Alan in New York, and Marjorie in Georgia. Welcome, everybody. Colorful page today is 135 here in Tractate Bava Basra, 23rd volume of the Talmud. Continuing our discussion of Mishna number 8 here in chapter 8, which God willing we're going to complete today. So the Mishnah said, Mishnah number 8, that a man who says, "This is my son, and therefore he's going to inherit from me," is deemed credible to say that. But a man who says, "Hey, this guy is our brother, and he's going to inherit alongside of us," when he has one or more other brothers, and they don't know who this guy is that he's bringing along and saying, "This is our brother." So he's not deemed credible to the extent that the new guy is going to share in the inheritance with these other brothers who have no idea who he is. But the guy who claims that the new guy is their brother is deemed credible, and to the extent that he's going to have to share his own portion of the inheritance with this new guy that he claims is their brother. Okay, we picked this up right at the top of page 135a. The Gemara relates there was a certain man who was presumed to have brothers, but no children. This means that when he dies, his wife has a yibum obligation, either to marry one of these brothers, and so that their first child can be the heir of the one who died childless, or to perform the chalitza ceremony so that she doesn't have to marry him, and if he doesn't want to marry her or she doesn't want to marry him, they're not going to get married. But they do have to perform the chalitza ceremony so that she is free to go marry whoever she wants. She has that obligation because she's the widow of a man who left a brother and no children. So there was a certain man who was presumed to have brothers but no children, and he was dying. So his wife was therefore presumed to be obligated in yibum. Those with him said to him, "To whom may your wife be married? Is she required to enter into yibum, or is she permitted to marry whomever she wishes?" So what they're saying to him is, since he's presumed to have brothers, they're saying, "Have you had a child?" Because if he's had a child, then there's no yibum obligation. If they don't know whether he has brothers or not, or if they're not sure whether he has brothers or not, then they're asking him, "Do you have brothers?" Right? And if he says, "No, I don't have a brother," then she has no yibum obligation either. Now, one thing that's a little interesting, we see this over and over again. I translated that as them saying to him, "To whom may your wife get married after you die?" But the Hebrew, or in this case the Aramaic, is actually to whom may his wife. They're talking to him about his wife, but they're saying instead of to whom may your wife marry after you die, they say to whom may his wife marry after you die. Likewise, when you're talking to somebody about him, you might, instead of saying you might speak about him in the third person as, what does the master hold about this? Rather than what does my master, or what do you hold about this opinion? This use of the third person, it's kind of use out of respect and formality. And it's a construction that we often find in the Talmud. Okay, but the point is, they're asking him, to whom may your wife marry, right? So in other words, is she free of the yibum obligation or not? And there's a note that they might be saying if he has multiple brothers, they're asking him, whom would you prefer that she perform yibum with? So all these three things are possible when they're asking him, to whom shall she marry? To whom may his wife, meaning your wife, be married? Is she required to enter into yibum, levirate marriage, or is she permitted to marry whomever she wishes? And he said to them, she is fit to marry even a high priest. She is not required to enter into levirate marriage. Now, he spoke in a somewhat offhand, he was on his deathbed, maybe he wasn't really thinking this through. He was just kind of making the point strongly that she's not obligated in yibum. She's not fit to marry the high priest for two reasons. Number one, at the time that this incident happened, which is in the days of the Gemara, which is long past the destruction of the Second Temple, so there was no high priest. And number two, if there was a high priest, if this incident happened during the days of the temple was standing, she would not be fit to marry a high priest because the high priest cannot marry a widow. The high priest has to marry, a woman who's never been married before. But a regular priest who's not a high priest, they can marry a widow. They cannot marry a divorcee. A regular Jew, of course, can marry a divorced woman. A Kohen cannot, and a Kohen Gadol, a high priest, can't even marry a widow. Okay, what he's saying to them is, yes, she can marry whoever she wants, right? When she's a widow, meaning she's not going to be a divorcee. And if there was a yibum obligation and she had to perform chalitza with one of the brothers, then she would be disqualified from marrying a priest. So he's saying there is no yibum obligation. It was just a more colorful way of saying it. Rava said, with what possibility need we be concerned with regard to her? Now, this opened by saying in this incident, he was presumed to have brothers, right? We don't know for sure. The brothers aren't there. He's just presumed to have brothers, and he's presumed to have no children. So why is she permitted to marry, at least a regular priest? It's not because he divorced her, because if he divorced her, there would be no yibum, but she also wouldn't be qualified to marry a priest. So it's either that he had a child or that he has no brothers. Now, Rava said, with what possibility need we be concerned with regard to her? Doesn't Rabbi Chia bar Abba say that Rabbi Yochanan says, a husband who says, I have divorced my wife, is deemed credible, and she is exempt from yibum. Therefore, this woman will be exempt as well. Abaye said to him, but when Rav Yitzhak bar Yosef came from Eretz Yisrael, he said that Rabbi Yochanan says, a husband who says, I have divorced my wife, is not deemed credible. So Rava said to him, but didn't we resolve the contradiction, concluding that here Rabbi Yochanan was referring to retroactive testimony, and there he was referring to testimony for the future. Therefore, according to both versions of Rabbi Yochanan's statement, the husband should be deemed credible in this case. Now, here what they're saying is, well, when the guy said she could even marry the high priest, clearly he was just saying she's free to marry whoever she wants. The high priest is definitely off the table because she's going to be a widow. Now that we're saying he's speaking, just saying, that the phrase she can even marry the high priest equals she can marry whoever she wants, we're now also taking into account that, well, you don't even mean that she could marry a regular priest. You're saying she's free to marry anyone she wants. There's no yibum obligation, perhaps because you already divorced her, right? The guy has the power to divorce his wife anytime he wants. So maybe what he's saying is, I divorced her. Now, we saw yesterday that there was this question that we don't believe a man, he's not deemed credible to say, I divorced her last year. But he is deemed credible to say, she is divorced from me. So at least as of this date, when he makes that statement, going forward in time, we accept that she is divorced and she can be with whoever she wants after that. So what they're saying here is, okay, so we accept that at least going forward, after this guy dies, we're going to accept that actually she didn't become a widow. He already divorced her because that's what he said. Abaye responded, but shall we arise and rely on answers in a halachic ruling? Although the contradiction, right, because we said, well, we don't accept if he said, I divorced her a while ago, and therefore if it turned out that she had slept with some other guy after this date of her alleged divorce, according to her husband, we're unsure if she really was divorced at that time, and so there's a doubt whether she committed adultery or not. With this other man, that would create a doubt about her children, if they were born after that time, whether or not they're mamzerim. But at least we can accept going forward that she's divorced from him as of the time that the husband makes this statement. But we also saw there was a view that, well, if he made the claim about the past, maybe we don't accept his statement at all. And we don't know if she's divorced even from the date on which he made this statement, if on that date he said he divorced her in the past. Now, none of that is explicitly stated here. All the husband said was an answer to the question, to whom can she marry in the future? He said, oh, she can even marry the high priest. He didn't say anything about having divorced her or not. So what the sages are really addressing here is, what kinds of doubts exist out of this ambiguous statement, and how are we going to deal with them? So Abaye is saying, shall we arise and rely on answers in a halachic ruling? Meaning, okay, well, you yesterday in our reading reconciled two statements of Rabbi Yochanan according to one tradition, according to another tradition, that we can rely, at least going forward, if he said I divorced her in the past, that at least as of the date of the statement, we can rely on that going forward. She's considered divorced at least from that date. And another view that we don't accept that, since he said it about the past and he's not deemed credible about saying that I divorced her in the past, he's not deemed credible to say he divorced her at all. And that would definitely create a problem going forward, right? She's a widow after her husband dies, but we don't know if she was divorced before that. So now Abaye is saying, well, okay, you've got a way of reconciling those statements that might or might not apply here, but are we going to rely on a legal ruling that might not be universally accepted by all the sages to exempt her from, chalitza, if that's going to be necessary, because this guy was presumed to have brothers? Or are we going to try to remove all doubts so that her children never have a problem and people whispering, oh, I don't know if that kid might be a mamzer or not, etc. He wants to remove all doubt. That can be, you could think of it as a stringent position that's going to be difficult for her, but it's also in the long run going to, just make her free and clear so she doesn't have to worry about having any doubts. So that's why he says, shall we arise and rely on answers in a halachic ruling? Again, that's not accepted by everybody. Although the contradiction can be resolved in this manner, there's no guarantee that such a resolution is correct. Therefore, Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef's statement should still be taken into consideration, that there might be a doubt. So Rava subsequently said to Rav Nassan Bar Ami, yeah, be concerned about it. There may be a dispute with regard to this issue, as the resolution cannot be relied upon. And so the Gemara relates, there was a certain man who was presumed by us, meaning the court, to have no brothers. And therefore no yibum applies when the guy dies and leaves a wife if he had no children. And this man said at the time of his death that he has no brothers. Okay, well, what's complicated about that? The court was under the assumption that he doesn't have brothers, and at the time of his death, he confirmed that he has no brothers. Sounds like, what room for doubt is there? Rav Yosef said, with what possibility need we be concerned with regard to his wife in terms of her requiring yibum or chalitza? So for one, he is presumed by us to have no brothers. And furthermore, he said at the time of his death that he has no brothers. Abaye said to him, but don't people say that there are witnesses overseas who know that he has brothers? Therefore, we should be concerned that this report is accurate. It's not that in all cases of a guy in his deathbed who says he has no brothers, and the court assumes he has no brothers, that we should assume there's some rumor floating about him out there that he actually does have brothers. That's not some kind of a general supposition. But apparently in this incident, he was presumed to have no brothers. He said he had no brothers. But some people in the town were talking about, what are you talking about? We heard that he does have brothers. Somebody came and told us that overseas he has a brother. If that's true, then the wife definitely has a problem because she can't remarry until she makes yibum or probably performs chalitza with that other brother, who's overseas. And how's she going to do that if he's overseas? It's a problem. They're going to need to take account of the problem because this rumor has reached the ears of the court. Now, it's not just any rumor, right? It's not like some malicious person can, just start a rumor to render this woman stranded and unable to marry. For whatever the circumstances were in this case, it was a rumor that needed to be taken at least somewhat seriously. So what are they going to do about it? Rav Yosef responded, well, in any event, now the witnesses who claim that they heard that this man has brothers overseas, those witnesses are not present before us. So this possibility does not need to be taken into account. There's a limit, right, to how far we're going to go to, take an account of this possibility of a rumor. Now, isn't this the same as Rabbi Hanina's ruling in a case where women who were captured and subsequently liberated claimed that they were not raped while in captivity? This is Tractate Kesuvos 23a. As, although people said that there were witnesses elsewhere who could testify that they were raped, Rabbi Hanina says that they were permitted to marry a priest, reasoning just because there may be witnesses in the north, i.e. in a distant place, will the woman be forbidden? Now, this is obviously only an issue with respect to marrying a priest. The fact that a woman was raped or not raped does not, interfere with her ability to marry any other Jew. With a priest, it's even there a questionable prohibition, kind of depends on the circumstances. It's what we would call a light prohibition, and it only applies with respect to marrying a priest. But for the vast majority of Jews, obviously makes no difference. If a wife is raped, she remains permitted to her husband. If a single woman is raped, she remains permitted to marry any other Jew, possibly not a priest. Abaye said to him, if we were lenient with regard to a captive woman due to, among other reasons, the fact that she makes herself repulsive before the captor so that he will not want to rape her, and we assume that she was not raped, should we be lenient with regard to a married woman? Because a married woman and having an obligation to perform yibum or chalitza, that's a different kind of situation. It's a much bigger prohibition, a sterner prohibition, because as a married woman, the presumption is that she's prohibited to all men, unless we find out that she was divorced or that she was widowed. So should we also be lenient with regard to a married woman? Rava said to Rav Nassim bar Ami, be concerned about it. Do not permit this woman to remarry until the matter is clarified. Here we're talking about a widow who it's possible that the husband had brothers. We know he was childless. That's why there may be a yibum obligation. Even though the court assumed he had no brothers and he said he had no brothers, the fact that people are saying nobody did have brothers, they have to clarify. They're going to have to investigate the matter and clarify it. That's what it means, be concerned about it. Now, the Mishna teaches, back to our Mishna, Mishna number 8, teaches that one who says, this is my brother, he is not deemed credible with regard to his other brothers' share of their father's inheritance. So rather, the man in question, the new brother, the alleged new brother, the man in question receives a portion only from the portion of the one who testified concerning him that he is our brother. So the Gemara clarifies, and what do the other brothers say? If they say, oh, you're right, he is our brother, so why does the man in question take a portion of the inheritance only with the one who testified from his portion and nothing more? If the other brothers admit that he is their brother, then they should all share with him and give him an equal share in the inheritance of their father. So rather, what we're dealing with is a case where the other brothers are saying, he is not our brother. They deny it, right? One brother comes and says, hey, we have a long-lost brother. You guys didn't know. And the other brothers say, we don't know who this guy is. Why should he share in our inheritance? We don't know him. We deny that he's our brother. Gemara answers, no, that's not the only situation where this comes up. It is necessary to state this ruling only in a case where the other brothers say, we do not know if he is our brother. It's not only that it's not only in a case where they deny it. Actually, this ruling concerns a case where they say, we don't know. We never met this guy before. Maybe he's our brother, but we don't know that. Therefore, they are not obligated to give the new guy a portion of their inheritance, as he cannot prove to them that he is their brother. Nevertheless, they can claim a portion of his inheritance after his death on the basis of their brother's testimony. Right? So let's say there's Reuven and Shimon, I'm Levi, right? And the new guy is Judah, just to assign names, right? So I'm Levi, so I say, hey guys, to my two brothers, look at this guy Judah. He's actually our brother. He's our long-lost brother. Reuven and Shimon say, we don't know this guy. Maybe he's our brother. Prove it. Prove it to us. We don't know, right? And Judah can't prove it, and I can't prove it, but I'm claiming that he is our brother. So when we receive our inheritance, from our father, let's call him Jacob. So then we get 3 portions, or actually 4 portions. Reuven as the firstborn, he's going to get a double, so he gets 2 portions. Shimon gets 1 portion. I get 1 portion, and because I'm claiming that Judah's our brother, I'm going to split my portion in half and give half to Judah. They don't have to give of their portions because it hasn't been proven to them, and they don't accept outright that he is our brother. Now, if Judah then dies and he didn't have children, right? So brothers inherit from each other if there's no children to be the heirs. So what Judah received from me comes back to me. And then what's the interesting question is, what if Judah received other property in the meantime? Not from our father Jacob, but some other kind of property came to him. And was part of his estate after I declared him to be one of our brothers. Then when he dies, the portion from our father that he received from me, my half of the inheritance, that comes back to me. But any extra property that he acquired, which we're not going to inherit as his brothers, well, I've claimed that he is our brother. Therefore, that extra property gets split between all of us, right? I get 1/3 of the extra property. I get 1/3, Shimon gets 1/3, and Reuven gets 1/3. And now they're going to ask the kind of in-between question, as you shall see. Okay. Where was I? Okay, so this is a claim where they say they do not know. So Rava says, that is to say, that if one says to another, let me just go back a second. So the Gemara, rather they're saying he is not our brother. Yeah, it's necessary to state this in a case where they say, we do not know if he's our brother. Therefore, they are not obligated to give him a portion of their inheritance, as he cannot prove to them that he is their brother. And nevertheless, they can claim a portion of his inheritance after his death on the basis of one brother's testimony, on the basis of Levi's testimony. So Rava says, that is to say, that if one says to another, we're making a comparison here to this law of inheritance from another area of the law, That is to say that if one says to another person, I have 100 dinars in your possession, right? Meaning I lent you 100 dinars. And the other person says, I don't know if you lent me 100 dinars. He's not denying it. He's not admitting it. He just says, I don't know. So in that situation, he is exempt. Similar to this case, where the brothers who claim that they do not know if this person is their brother are not obligated to share their inheritance with him. In other words, I say I lent you 100 dinars. You say, I don't know. Prove it. If I can't prove it, you're not going to have to pay me back that 100 dinars. So Abaye said, and now we're on page 135b, actually, I will say to you that one who responds to a claim that he does not know if he owes 100 dinars is obligated to pay. If I say I lent you 100 dinars and you say I don't know if you lent me 100 dinars, one view is unless I can prove that I lent you 100 dinars, you don't have to pay. But the other view is if I say I lent you 100 dinars and you say I don't know if you lent me 100 dinars, the fact that I'm certain and you don't know is actually going to end up obligating you to pay. I have a claim of certainty. You have a claim of you don't know. And so against the weight of my certain claim, your I don't know is not strong enough, and you're going to end up owing me the 100 dinars. So Abaye said, actually, I will say to you that one who responds to a claim that he does not know if he owes the 100 dinars is obligated to pay. But here in the case of the brothers, we don't apply that principle because it's different. The brothers are not obligated to share their portion with the new brother, with Judah, because the brother who testified, Levi, is like one who claims another person has 100 dinars in your possession, right? Now, I'm not saying I lent you 100 dinars. I'm saying he lent you 100 dinars, right? Against that claim, I'm saying I know that he lent you 100 dinars, and I don't have evidence, but I know, and I'm a single witness. Do you have to pay him 100 dinars? Apparently not. It's like one who claims another person has 100 dinars in your possession. Since the claimant is not the one who is owed the money, the other party can reject his claim by merely answering that he does not know whether he owes that guy or not. And since it hasn't been proven that he does, there's only the testimony of one witness, which is not enough, so we have not established the matter. New subject. The Mishna, Mishna number 8, teaches if the man in question, so Judah, dies, the property that he received from the father's inheritance shall return to its place. I said he's our brother, so I gave him half of the inheritance portion that I received. If he then dies, it comes back to me, as I said before, returns to its place, i.e. to the possession of the brother who testified on his behalf. And if the man in question received property from elsewhere, not from our father Jacob, then it is inherited by all the brothers equally. So about this, Rava raises a dilemma. With regard to the enhancement of the property received by the man in question from the portion of the brother who testified. I said he's our brother. We got these portions in inheritance from Jacob. Because I'm the one who says he's our brother, these guys say, I don't know if he's our brother, so they don't have to give up of their portion. But I gave him half of my portion, and that went to Judah. Now, it came ultimately right from our father, came to me. I gave half of what I received from our father to Judah, the new brother. And then while it was in his possession, let's say it was a field that had crops on it, and the crops were growing. So whatever the field was worth when he received it, it's worth more when the crop has grown, especially if the crop is ready to be harvested. Then it's worth quite a bit more. So who gets the value of that when he dies, right? The value, the enhancement in the value of the field, does it come back to me? Or do I divide that enhancement in the value with Shimon and Reuven as well? That's the question being asked. Rava raised a dilemma with regard to the enhancement of the property received by the new brother from the portion of the one who testified, where its enhanced value was the result of an enhancement that happened naturally, like crops growing in a field, as opposed to one that resulted from exertion, like that he took what he received and invested it, right? So that then he made an action which is not the same as a natural enhancement. Then what is the law? Who inherits it? That's Rava's question. And the Gemara elaborates, with regard to enhancement that reaches the shoulders, meaning ripe produce that's ready to be harvested, do not raise the dilemma, as it is considered like property that came into his possession from elsewhere. It didn't come from the portion that I gave him. It's ready to be harvested. It's like it was his own thing that he received. So that gets split between the three brothers. Rather, let the dilemma be raised with regard to enhancement that does not reach the shoulders and is considered separate and is not considered separate from the ground, such as a palm tree that thickened or land that yielded silt. What is the law in that case? Is the enhancement included in the property itself, or is it considered separate property? Meaning, if he dies now, does it come back just to me, the one who gave him half of my portion, or does it get split between me and Shimon and Reuven? Teku, that question shall stand unresolved. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 8 here in chapter 8. Mishnah 9. With regard to one who died and a will written by a person on his deathbed, known as a diatike, is found bound to his thigh, which clearly indicates that it was written by him and was not forged. This is nothing. This guy on his deathbed wrote a will, and it's found on his person. So it's clear, we have good evidence that he wrote it. It wasn't forged. And yet we say this is nothing. Why? Why would it be nothing? If he wrote the will and he's on his deathbed and now he's dead and we find this will on him, why wouldn't we follow the instructions in the will? Answer, the will is not valid as he did not give it to anyone. And he may have reconsidered. We don't know if that was his final intention, that should be his will. Maybe he wrote out that will, he looked at it, he's like, you know what? I'm just going to leave my old will to stand the way it is. He didn't give this will to anybody. We don't know that really was his last will, that the instructions in it were his final intention, because he might have retracted. And the reason we don't know is he didn't give it to anybody. However, if he transferred ownership of the will to the designated recipient through another person, whether one of the heirs or whether not one of the heirs, then his statement stands. So if he wrote that will and he said, here, this is my last will to anybody, then we honor that will. That's Mishnah number 9. Now the Gemara. The sages taught, Tosefta 8:10, which deed is considered a diatike and is collected by the designated recipient after the death of the giver, right? A deathbed will. Any deed in which it is written, this will be to stand and exist after my death. And which type is considered a deed of gift? Any deed in which it is written from today and after my death, right? So one is a deed of gift. It's not a will. It's just I'm giving it to you right now. I'm alive and I'm giving it to you. That's not a will. That's a gift. And the other is a will which says, upon my death, you shall receive such and such. And how do we distinguish legal documents that, one says I'm giving it to you right now, and the other says I'm going to give it to you after I die. You're going to inherit it after I die. The wording is what tells us which is a deed of gift and which is a deathbed will. Right? So the deed of will, that is a will, is the wording, this will be to stand and exist after my death. And the kind that's considered a deed of gift is where the wording is from today and after my death. So from today, the gift is yours as of today. You're only going to actually receive it after I die. But the gift is valid and activated today. That's why it's a gift and not a will. Okay, now the Gemara. The sages taught, Now the Gemara asks, is it considered a deed of gift only if the expression from today and after my death is written? Whereas if it is written only from now, it is not considered a deed of gift? Like, obviously, if I say, this is yours as of right now, that's a deed of gift. I'm not even going to say, and you only receive it after I die. If I say from now, it's a gift, right? So why would, in other words, that's also a deed of gift. The Gemara is being very precise here. Abaye said that this is what the Baraisa is saying. Which deed of gift of a healthy person is considered like the deed of gift of a person on his deathbed, in that the recipient acquires it only after the death of the giver? There is any deed in which it is written, from today and after my death, right? So that's considered like a deathbed gift. It's obvious that in a deathbed gift, the intention is you're going to get this after I die. If a healthy person is meaning to do the same thing, I'm giving it to you as of now, but you're only going to receive it after I die. The wording for that is from today and after my death. New subject. Rabba bar Rav Huna was sitting in the balcony of Rav's study hall and sat and said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, if there is a person on his deathbed who says, write a deed of transfer granting property of mine to another and give with it 100 dinars to so-and-so, and he then died, so before it was written, one does not write and give it. And this is because perhaps he resolved to transfer it to him only with a deed of transfer. And since the deed was not written in his lifetime, it cannot be written after his death, as a deed of transfer is not effective after the death of the owner. So it's very interesting. Like, let's say I say, okay, now first of all, it's going to be a different question, movable property versus real property. But here they're talking about 100 dinars, so it's movable property, right? Money is movable property. So he's saying, here's this bag of money, give it to so-and-so. Now, if that somebody says that on the deathbed in front of witnesses, they're just going to give it to so-and-so. But since he said, give this bag of money with a deed of transfer to so-and-so, and he died before that deed of transfer could be written, so-and-so's not going to get the money. Because the guy in his deathbed said, give him that gift with a deed of transfer, and the deed of transfer was not written, and you can't write it after the guy dies. Now, the question is, what was his intent? Why did he say give it to so-and-so with a deed of transfer? There's two possibilities. One is, I want him to get this money with a deed of transfer, meaning he can only have it if he takes it with a deed of transfer. And if the deed of transfer was never written, that's why the guy's not going to get it, and the person's heirs are going to receive the money. They might decide to honor the wish that their father was expressing, but it's up to them, and they don't have to give it to this other guy. The other possibility is he really just wanted that guy to have the money, and he wanted everyone to know that the money is legally his, and that's why he's saying kind of augment his authority over that money with the deed of transfer. In that case, we're going to give him the money, and we're probably going to even write the deed of transfer because the intent was obviously to give him the money and to sort of emphasize for the knowledge of the community that for sure that guy should receive the gift, even to the extent of having a deed of transfer with it. So now they're going to examine these two possibilities. Rabba bar Rav Huna continued that when Rabbi Yochanan stated this law, that we don't give it, right? Because he said give him the money with a deed of transfer, and then he died before the deed was written, so we don't give it to him. Rabba bar Rav Huna continued that when Rabbi Yochanan stated this law, Rabbi Elazar said to the other sages, heed this halacha. It is correct. Rav Shezevi said, that is not what happened. Rabbi Elazar is the one who said this halacha, and it was Rabbi Yochanan who said to them, heed this halacha. Okay, well, it's not clear whose authority it was, but everyone agrees this is the law. Rav Nachman bar Yitzhak said, it is reasonable to say that the incident was in accordance with the version presented by Rav Shezevi. Granted, if you say that Rabbi Elazar said the law, Rabbi Yochanan needed to affirm the ruling of Rabbi Elazar. But if you say that Rabbi Yochanan was the one who said it, did Rabbi Elazar need to affirm the ruling of Rabbi Yochanan, his teacher? Right? Obviously, if Rabbi Yochanan said it needs no further authority. But if Rabbi Elazar, who's the student of Rabbi Yochanan, is the one who initially stated it, and Rabbi Yochanan affirmed it as if to say, yeah, my student was right, and you can count on this ruling, and now we've heard it from Rabbi Yochanan, who is earlier in higher stature. And furthermore, coming here proof that Rabbi Elazar was the one who said this law from another statement of his. As Ravin sent a message in the name of Rabbi Abahu, know that Rabbi Elazar sent a ruling to the exile, right, from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, in the name of our teacher, stating that if there's a person on his deathbed who says, write a deed of transfer and give it with 100 dinars to so-and-so, and he then died, one does not write and give it, and this is because perhaps he resolved to transfer it to so-and-so only with a deed of transfer, and since the deed was not written in his lifetime, it cannot be written after his death, as a deed of transfer is not effective after the death of its owner. And Rabbi Yochanan says this ruling is correct. However, the wording of the deed should be examined. Now that's a new wrinkle. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan affirms that Rabbi Elazar spoke correctly, that we don't write this deed of transfer. But then Rabbi Yochanan adds this extra little codicil that, however, the wording of the deed should be examined. What does that mean? The Gemara asks, what did Rabbi Yochanan mean by saying that the wording should be examined? And the Gemara answers, when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia, to Bavel, he stated two laws, two halachas. The first was that a dayatike, a deathbed deed of transfer, or deathbed will, right? The first was that a dayatike cancels a previous dayatike, right? This is my last will and testament, and it supersedes any previous will and testament. And the second explains the examination to which Rabbi Yochanan was referring. If there is a person on his deathbed who said, write a deed of transfer and give it with 100 dinars to so-and-so, and he then died, we don't just stop at, well, then we don't transfer the money and we don't, because we don't write a deed of transfer after a person dies. Rather, the court must investigate and see what his intention was in instructing the other person to write a deed of transfer. If it was to enhance the recipient's power by writing a document proving that he was given the gift, in that case, one writes the document even after the death of the one who is giver, as he intended to give the money anyway. But if not, if rather it was the giver's intention to transfer the gift specifically through the device of a deed of transfer, then one does not write it and give the money, as a deed of transfer is not effective after the death of the owner. So you see, that's why I say there were two possibilities. Did the giver intend to transfer the money by way using the device of a deed of transfer, or did he want to just give the money, but he wanted to augment the recipient's power over the money by having written evidence that he received that gift? If it's the latter, then we give him the gift and we even write the transfer, because it was the giver's intention that he should have the money and that he should have this recorded evidence of it. Rabbi Abba Bar Memel raises an objection from a Baraisa. If there is a healthy person who said, write a deed of transfer and give it with 100 dinars to so-and-so, and he then died, one does not write and give it. So Rabbi Abba Bar Memel inferred, but if a person was on his deathbed and states this request, then one does write and give it. So he raises the objection and then he resolves it. The ruling of that Baraisa is in a case where he was enhancing the recipient's legal power by writing him a document of proof. That latter example, when we do give him the gift and we do write the deed of transfer. But if we have any reason to believe that he only wanted to convey the 100 dinars by way of a deed of transfer, then we don't write the deed of transfer. I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. Now the Gemara explains, what are the circumstances under which it is apparent that he is enhancing his legal power, right? Where it's apparent that he just wants the guy to have it, and we are only writing, adding the document to enhance his authority over the money. so that we can feel comfortable in giving him the money and writing this deed of transfer after the death of the giver. In what circumstances can we make that assumption? It is, as Rav Chisda says, that if it is written in the will and we acquired it from him through an act of acquisition in addition to his gift, this formulation does not cancel the will's power to take effect after the person's death, as the intention of referring to it as a gift is merely to enhance the legal power of the recipient by confirming the transfer through an act of acquisition, as opposed to the deed of transfer itself. So here too, in a case where he says, write and sign a document as well and give it to him as well, right? So in other words, give him the gift and write a document as well so that he'll have evidence of it. It is apparent that his request is to enhance the legal power of the recipient by writing a document in addition to transferring the gift itself. And it was stated that Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says that the law is that one writes a document and gives the money in this case. And Rava says similarly that Rav Nachman said that the halacha is that one writes a document and gives the money in this case, bringing us more, obviously closer to what seemed to be the intent of the giver. But it was important to note that, if the intent wasn't so clear and that for some reason he only wanted to give the gift through the legal device of a deed of transfer, then we can't do it because once he's dead, there is no legal transfer. And maybe he knew the law and he spoke that way just to get the alleged recipient out of the room, and he never really intended to give it to him, and so we don't give it to him. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 9. With God's help, tomorrow night, Motzi Shabbos, we will start Mishnah number 10 on page 136. Now, the Saturday night class is much more reasonable since the clocks have changed. I think maybe I can be on the air by like 7, right? I think Shabbos is starting 4:50 something in LA. So, it should be over at a reasonable hour. Hopefully I can get on the air by like 7-ish tomorrow night, 7-ish Pacific. Okay. A few questions. Tom, the man never pays a price for lying or for being ambiguous regarding his wife's status. We're talking about the guy who says that she's divorced. I don't know if they're talking about lying. Unless we're talking about the case where he's trying to save her, because they're divorced and he's saying they were actually divorced at an earlier date. So whatever paramour she had, it was not adultery. I think in all these cases, what they're saying here are the general principles, but these are very emotional cases, and they're going to have to really weigh the evidence carefully. Is there no penalty for lying? I'm not sure which case you were talking about. So I'm not sure if there's no penalty for lying. Usually there is. Jonathan, with regard to brothers, but now that we have DNA, we could resolve the ambiguity of, is he a brother? I would think that would indeed make a difference, right? That wasn't possible then. So this would be one of those situations where, are we going to say that, well, no matter what the DNA says, we have an established precedent in halacha. And so even though we know for a fact that he's a brother, still Reuven and Shimon aren't going to have to give part of the inheritance. Or perhaps halacha has moved forward. And we say, well, now that we have actual evidence, right, unquestionable, uncontested evidence that he is the brother, then presumably Reuven and Shimon would have to admit, and it would become a situation where they admit, not where they say, I don't know, because they do know. Good point. Joe, when the brothers deny the new brother, are they required to swear an oath in order to curb the chance of denial in order to claim a larger part of the inheritance? Well, it's interesting because they said, is it where they admit? No, because they admit there's no question. Is it where they deny? And the Gemara seemed to say it's not where they deny, it's where they say we don't know. If they deny, we didn't really examine that case. Now, on the basis of what do they deny? how can they say we know he's not our brother? That's why I think it was turned into a situation of we don't know. It's very hard for them to say we deny. We know he's not our brother, right? Now that would seem, how would they know that? Presumably they bring other witnesses to say, well, no, this guy's father is not our father. Here's witnesses who are showing who his father is, and then they would deny. So in that case, why would they need to swear an oath? They're relying on actual evidence that could come before the court. Sharon, how is this questionable brother handled in issues of permitted and prohibited marriages? What a good question. In other words, if he's just a random guy, right? And let's say that, Shimon has an ex-wife. He was married to her, they divorced. If he's a random guy, he can marry Shimon's ex-wife. If he's their brother, he cannot marry Shimon's ex-wife. So he says he's the brother. So presumably then we would prohibit him from marrying Shimon's wife, at least by virtue of the doubt that has been created by bringing him forward as the brother. That's going to be enough to render him prohibited to Shimon's ex-wife. I would think. I could be wrong, but that's my impression. Great question. Raquel, I don't understand why the two undecided brothers should profit from their putative brother's death when they did not share the inheritance from their father when the putative brother was alive. Perfect question. You understand the matter entirely. The reason why they would share in it is because this brother and that new brother are both claiming that he is the brother, right? So they can't prove it, and that's why these guys don't have to share the father's inheritance. But now that these guys have come and said, no, Judah is our brother, Judah says, I'm your brother, well then, by Judah's testimony, if he then dies and has additional property and no heirs, it goes to his brothers, and it goes to his brothers, whether they acknowledged him as a brother or not, because by his own testimony, he's the brother. And that's the reason why it would go to them. That's the way I understand it. That's what I've got for us today. And with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Motzi Shabbos, I think like 7-ish p.m. Pacific time. Have a great night.